Right, so Donna has two questions, a really simple one to start with. Hi, Stephen and Richard. Could we have the link for the organic sun balm, which is tallow-based, on here, please? So I think that's something you're involved in, so we can do that.
I can do that for you. Let me do that while we're on. Do you want to roll on with the next question while I find...
I do, because it's also Donna. Electrolytes with stevia is heading. I've been wondering about the stevia in the Keto Pro electrolytes. I tried the unflavoured first and wasn't keen on the taste, so I mix it with the flavoured ones now, which I like very much, and my leg cramps have stopped. I worry about the sweetness, though, and the effects of stevia on blood sugar levels and hormones.
Yeah, great question. So, yes, the unflavoured version is not for the faint of heart. It's called unflavoured, but it does have a natural flavour to it. One of the main compounds in there that separates my electrolytes to anybody else's is the astaxanthin. Now, astaxanthin is one of the world's only, minus vitamin C, obviously, and things like vitamin E, but when we look at turmeric, for example, as being an antioxidant, things like this are not antioxidants, they are pro-oxidants, and they elicit a pro-oxidant response. Astaxanthin elicits an antioxidant response without activating our friend, the NRF2 pathway, so it doesn't begin its journey as a pro-oxidant. Unfortunately, astaxanthin has a fishy taste or saltwater taste, which is quite strong. We could take it out and offer the unflavoured without it, and I think that would probably be way more palatable, and we may even do that moving forward, but I just feel that the benefit of the astaxanthin is 800 times stronger than coenzyme Q10, 550 times stronger than vitamin E as an antioxidant, 65 to 80 times stronger than vitamin C. It's an incredible compound that confers lots of benefit. I wouldn't want to take it out, but it is something I'm looking at. I am looking into it because I believe the taste on the unflavoured, or unsweetened, I should say, does put an awful lot of people off. So I'm glad that you've tried it. There is a warning on the website that it does taste pretty strong. It's very overpowering. So that is what I call for the carnivore elite, if you like. The creme de la creme, the people who don't want to use any plant compound whatsoever. I drink them, but I'll be honest, I've got, you guys probably can't see that, I've got some here, but this is the flavoured version. I don't think stevia is a big problem. There are reasons to be concerned with stevia, but when we look at negative results of stevia, they are done on quantities which are like 1,000 times higher than you're likely to consume within a day. And the amount of stevia that we actually put into the product is very, very small. It's the last ingredient on the list, which means it's the lowest volume within the product. You don't need to add an awful lot because it is very sweet. Most of the sweetness in the flavoured actually comes from the vitamin C. And again, that doesn't really need to be in there, but it does add a little bit of flavour. Regardless of what our thoughts are on beta-carotene, it does add a little sweet taste. Vitamin C has been known to cause an insulin response in some people, but we've tested these over thousands and thousands of people. It's had little to no response in almost everybody we've tested, and any response that the stevia or vitamin C has given in regards to a glucose response has been negligible, not enough to pull you from a ketogenic state. It does nothing to my blood glucose. It's not to say that these sweet products can't. You can get what's called a salvatic response, which is where something sweet hits the tongue and the body thinks that we are consuming glucose, so it has an insulin response. The simple way to try this is to just test your blood glucose before, have a serving, and test it soon after, and you'll see that it does nothing to your blood glucose in most people. I say that with caution because there probably are a small percentage of people out there who will elicit a response. When we look at sweetener, the four best that we can consume are stevia, erythritol. Regardless of our thoughts on plant compounds, they are the healthiest that we can consume. And these are almost gateways towards the unflavored, if you like, if you ever get there. But if you don't, stevia and erythritol are two of the healthiest. Monk fruit being another, and glycerol another. So those are my four top sweeteners, if and should you choose to be using any. When we look at others, things like sucralose, I believe to be detrimental. Aspartame, xylitol and maltitol, so polyols, other polyols, which erythritol comes into a polyol bracket. Others can still elicit an insulin response. The body still thinks that, so when we look at polyols, they are deemed to be zero carb. But the fact is, up to 65% of that polyol can still be absorbed from xylitol, maltitol, and all of the other polyols, except for erythritol. And this is why we use these within the product. It doesn't do much for me in regards to an insulin or glucose response, but test it. Steve's tried it. We've had it tested across the board. I don't think it's a problem. And if it's a compound that you need to keep in order to allow you to consume adequate level of electrolytes, then to me, that's a trade-off. I regard myself as being a strict carnivore, but I drink these throughout the day with no issues at all. I don't have any negative effects from anything, any aspect, blood glucose, insulin, or anything else in regards to my blood work for that matter. But it is very much individual. If you can get on with the sweetener, with stevia, and that's what it takes to consume it, then carry on.
That's great. Thanks, Richard. So for those that are listening on the audio podcast, this is a recording of the live question and answer session, and we're doing questions that have been posted on the internet first, and we've also got people in the room, and we will come to those. And Gregory asked, creamy soft cheese. I've been doing Lion Diet for about 8 months. I tried a small amount of full-fat soft cheese the other day. I had some hard cheese too, but now my body just seems to want full-fat soft cheese with everything I eat. Should I be concerned about the fact that it has carbs in it from the milk, etc.? There's no added extra ingredients in the cheese I've had. I've just got the all clear from Crohn's disease, so I'm concerned it might interfere with that. But I've been told to listen to what my body wants, and it wants cheese.
I love cheese. I think cheese is a fantastic product to keep in regards to snacks. They contain protein, they contain fat, same as an egg. And those are usually my go-to, cheese and eggs. The issue when it comes to cheese isn't the carbohydrate. The body can cope with carbohydrate. Especially as we become adapted. And as we become adapted, as you would be now 8 months in, we go through fat adaptation and then keto adaptation. Your body can cope with probably lots of carbohydrates. I'm talking maybe a better part of 100 grams per day, and you would still function and perform really well. The fact is you don't need it. We don't need the carbohydrates, so why would you want to put it in? I certainly wouldn't be concerned with the carb content from cheese. What I would be concerned about at the back of my mind is the casein. Casein can still cause intestinal permeability, but it tends not to do this when we've healed the gut. So it seems to be a contributing factor to people who are already suffering with intestinal permeability. But once the gut is healed, once we've removed the compounds like wheat germ agglutinin and phytohemagglutinin, and alcohol and so on and so forth, and we've healed the gut, most seem to cope very well with casein from cheese. And lots of carnivores thrive on A2 milk, which still contains casein, but it is very much an individual thing. So I would keep an eye on it. Cheese works really well for me. I don't consume it every day. I do cycle it. If it is causing any damage, at least then we're giving the body time for it to heal. But I do eat an awful lot of cheese. Cheese, the casomorphin, is highly addictive. This is why you're craving the cheese. Casomorphin is exactly what it sounds like, morphine. It's a morphine substance. It's highly addictive. This is why when you start eating cheese, just like your pack of Pringles back in the day, once you pop, you can't stop. And that's what it's like with cheese for me. Once I start eating a block of cheese, I can't stop. It is highly addictive. So when you say listen to your body, take that with a pinch of salt when it comes to cheese because of the casomorphine. So cheese works well for me. If you feel your gut, and it sounds like you should be able to keep it in. Just try not to overconsume and try to have some days without it, just to be sure that this intestinal permeability doesn't return.
Yes, that's a great answer. I remember when Gregory joined the Skool Community, and so now we're 8 months in, and he's cured his Crohn's disease. So that was a fantastic result, and obviously a good question. Now, I promise these people that who have posted these questions over the last 3 or 4 days that we'll definitely cover these. I know there's questions in the chat from the people in the room, but we'll do these first as they've been promised. Hello, I'm a newbie. It's only my 5th day. I've cut out all carbs and sugar plants from my diet, so only meat, eggs, some bacon. I still drink coffee. It helps with cravings. I feel weak and lightheaded. Do you have any tips? Can it be from carnivore?
Yes. Well, coming back to electrolytes, salts. We need sodium in particular. When you're new to the lifestyle, any low-carb journey, the kidneys release sodium from the body. So let's take it back to what essential hypertension is. Essential hypertension or high blood pressure is an insulin-dependent state. So when we're in a state of elevated insulin pulls sodium from 4 points in the nephrons in the kidney back into the blood, wherever... There it is, my favorite line. Wherever sodium goes, water follows. And that's what contributes to high blood pressure, but it isn't the cause. The insulin is the cause. So when we begin a low-carb lifestyle, insulin drops. Now it releases this sodium from the kidneys. And sodium is essential for life. We can't live without it. The study that I reference quite often covers 17 countries, over 100,000 participants, and it shows an inverse association with low sodium and all-cause mortality. So basically, the less sodium that we consume, the higher our risk of death, and it increases a lot the less that we consume. The sweet spot from the study, which measured what we were excreting, was between 6 to 7,000, 6 to 7, was it 4 to 6,000 maybe milligrams per day. But again, this is measuring what is lost, what is excreted. So we can assume that that is at least what we are consuming because the body is utilizing these also. So I consume closer to 10,000 milligrams of sodium per day. The guidelines tell us not to consume any more than 1,500 milligrams. This puts us in this area of massive increased risk of cardiovascular disease, all-cause mortality. So sodium is essential. So when insulin drops, we need sodium. So we need to salt our meals or take an electrolyte formula. You don't always have to take electrolytes. There are people who, once they've gone through this phase, they can come off them. I take them every day because I find that I function at a completely different level when I'm flooding my body with sodium and potassium. I do think that we do not get enough from our diet. You can get enough, but if you are busy and training and working out a lot, the requirement for this is higher. And we see this with the likes of Anthony Chaffee. Anthony Chaffee doesn't use any electrolytes, but then Sean Baker, who is a world record holder in rowing, he supplements with electrolytes to fuel, his lifestyle. But we certainly need to salt our meals. Now, there are two that I would preference over anything else, pink Himalayan and Celtic sea salt, but I would preference Celtic sea salt well above pink Himalayan. The reason for this is that pink Himalayan it comes from rocks in the mountains. It hasn't been passed through a living organism or been a living organism. So when we consume Celtic sea salt is microplastic free. This has been either passed through animals or is made up of animals, and it is highly bioavailable, way more bioavailable than pink Himalayan. Celtic sea salt is by far more beneficial, but if all you can get hold of is pink Himalayan, then that is number 2 on my list. But we need salt. We need salt on our meals. So salt your meals, salt to taste. You can add salt to water and get as much of the potassium as you can from your meats. Meat is a fantastic source of potassium. In fact, beef and lamb contains around 4 times more potassium than it does sodium. So we need potassium also. If supplementing with Celtic sea salt isn't enough, then maybe look at buying a good quality electrolyte. And I know someone who makes them, should you be looking for any. But and that's not a sales pitch, by the way. But this is why I've created them. I've created these products because everything else on the market, I believe, was substandard. But it's an electrolyte deficiency, but particularly sodium. Add sodium to the diet, and I believe that all of these things will begin to clear up for you.
Brilliant, Richard. 2 more pre-submitted questions, and then we'll get on to the questions in the room. Menopause and hot flashes. Does anyone have any experience or advice on eliminating hot flashes? I've been in menopause 5 years. I've been carnivore for 20 months. Please tell me that coffee isn't the problem. I drink a cup every day, and some days I have a second cup. Well, coffee is a problem. And I think you know that. That's why that's in that question there, because it's a stimulant. You could try Swiss water decaf. I live with someone that's had the menopause and gone through it. And you said, have I any experience of it? Oh, boy, I've lived it. Second hand, of course. So, yes, do I have any advice? Well, Jane tried hormone replacement therapy, but that didn't work, actually. And we're both very into not doing stuff like that. And that wasn't why it didn't work. She was very open-minded. It's been much better since she's been slightly more carnivore than she was. She was more sort of ketovore. Practical advice was dress in layers, which is, just a practical tip. Richard will come up with some more in a minute. I'm just doing some real practical ones. So dress in layers and with sort of like breathable fabrics, which is really good. So you can moderate your temperature with your clothing like that quite easily. Obviously, keep your environment as cool as possible, which is good for me because I like it nice and cool. And then you would identify your triggers. So you come back to things like coffee, and you have to be very careful. I mean, I've actually been coaching someone this week or actually last week, and they were worried about heart palpitations, different thing, but same sort of thing. We're going to talk about elimination. And I said, well, let's try caffeine first, because that seems to be the first place to go. And within 3 days, I had a message from her husband saying, thank you so much. Her heart palpitations have completely stopped. It was the caffeine. So you could do that, and then you can decide what you prefer. You might think, I really can't do without my coffee, so at least I know what causes it. Therefore, I'm going to have a couple of cups of coffee, but therefore I also might get a couple of hot flashes. So it's like informed consent. Or you could try Swiss water decaf. Obviously, other things help. I know it sounds rubbish, but, exercise helps, movement helps, all the normal things, getting your body composition right. Relaxation, Jane was into that anyway, but relaxation techniques, breathing techniques, and be careful of medications, because most of the antidepressants actually have a knock-on effect on your regulation of your temperature. And look after your thyroid, because that also has a lot to do with your body temperature. So iodine drops can actually help for some people. Right, that's my little 2 penneth. We'll head over to Richard for his answer, because I think you've dealt with a lot of women with menopause in the keto group.
Yeah, spot on. All fantastic pieces of advice. So menopause mimics the last phase of a cycle. So the ovaries stop producing estrogen, progesterone, so levels drop. And this then leads to hunger, inflammation, flushes, soreness, and so on and so forth. But one of the things that we try to do with this, now you touch base on exercise. Exercise is fantastic, but we need to be sure that we don't over-exercise. And by over-exercise, I mean anything that is beyond maybe an hour, 40 to 45 minutes may be optimal. The reason for this is that will elevate cortisol, and that further lowers estrogen, which leads to further weight gain, which is absolutely counterintuitive. But we need, within our diet, we need more omega-3s, saturated fats. All of these can help with estrogen. We need it to protect the myelin sheath, which is made up of fats and proteins. And we need them to allow us to clear amyloid plaques and so on and so forth. But iodine-rich foods, as Steve says, things like tuna is high in iodine, liver, king prawns, chicken. The electrolytes that we produce also contain iodine. Iodine is essential for thyroid hormone. But those would be my tips. Increase iodine-rich foods, increase omega-3s, saturated fats. The problem that we have is we've we've had a lifetime of abuse and avoiding things like saturated fats, and I think this is the reason that most of the issues come to the forefront. So when we begin to address these by consuming our saturated fats and omega-3s and eating the way that we should, a proper evolutionary appropriate diet that contains all of the compounds that we need, and more importantly, we avoid the compounds, the anti-nutrients, to prevent our body from absorbing these. Broccoli being one. Broccoli contains a compound called isothiocyanate, which it competes for absorption of iodine at the thyroid, and it prevents the thyroid from absorbing iodine, which leads to problems. And that's all sort of cruciferous types of veg. And if we've had a lifetime of that, then we've had a lifetime of damage that's being caused. So training is fantastic, but we need to make sure we don't overtrain. Iodine-rich foods, omega-3s, saturated fats, and as Steve rightly says, we need to think about removing the coffee. Coffee is a known contributor to increasing cortisol, and that is further going to exacerbate any issues. So, I mean, you could just begin with one of those, or make all changes. And maybe if you make all the changes and possibly introduce the coffee and see if that is causing a problem. But coffee isn't your friend. And I know Stephen and I've been a big fan of coffee for many years. I've pushed it for a long time. It's a fat mobilizer. It's worked incredibly well for me. But it's got to the point where I've consumed too much, and now it's causing neuromuscular problems. So Stephen and I are both 3 weeks plus, I think, of no coffee. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, well, actually, I was going to say about the informed consent. I've actually experimented with like 1 cup every other day just to see what would happen. And that was fine. I got away with it. I'm not thriving. So do listen to the language here. So then I tried 2 cups in a day, and then I went to soccer and I had the pains in my feet that had gone completely. And the difference was, and it's really strange because even doing this job, you fall for things. I thought my football boots were a bit too small for me. And I just thought, well, my feet ache because, I haven't played for 15 years. It's a hard surface. Did all the stuff that, the mainstream would tell you, get bigger boots. Well, when I cut the coffee, my boots were not too small for me. So it wasn't my boots. It was my feet were too big for me. My feet had inflamed. And it's quantifiable, which is why we always talk about when you're tracking, it isn't just a scale. It's things like your clothes, how they fit, and inflammation, which we'll come to in a minute in another question. These little nuances are really quite fascinating, actually. So I'm now looking at making decisions about social situations and whether I want a coffee or not. And if I can avoid it, I will, because I do feel better without it. And that's even a Swiss water decaf that's decaffeinated.
Yeah, 100%. Just one other thought as well, Steve, when you mentioned medication, I was thinking statins popped into mind. 2 other compounds that we need are things, selenium and coenzyme Q10, or ubiquinone. Ubiquinone is one of the stages. I think it's the next stage after something called the mevalonate pathway. The mevalonate pathway, and I won't get too technical, this is how we create ketones, but it's also a shared pathway to cholesterol production and how we create cholesterol, which we need. The statins help block or partially block the mevalonate pathway. The step after the mevalonate pathway is the production of ubiquinone or coenzyme Q10. This is very important for menopause and life in general. We need coenzyme Q10 to create DNA. So I'm not a fan of statins. Steve and I can't give medical advice, so we can't tell you not to take your statin. But I can tell you what I would do, and I wouldn't be taking a statin. Anything that prevents your body from creating DNA, I believe can't be good for you. Anything that blocks the body's ability to create cholesterol also cannot be good for you. Cholesterol is essential for life. So just bear that in mind also. If you are consuming statins, then that may be a compound that you may want to think about removing.
Yeah, we'll go to Gillian's question next, but I will just put a tin lid on that last thing you just said. If you reduce your intake of cholesterol, your body makes more. So that should tell you a bit more about how essential it is. So Gillian actually was very polite. Can I put a question to tonight's session? And I said, of course. I want to ask, how much meat does everyone eat in a day? Or does this depend on protein intake? as everyone is different. I know. I think I struggle to eat meat, or should I be eating 2 meals a day now? I'm at a weight which I have been for the last 6 months. My worry is that I don't want to lose my muscle as I get older. I'm 62. Do I overly have to have a higher intake of protein? I also swim 3 hours a week. I mean, my sort of thumbnail quick answer to that is you just got to look at your body and your hunger signals. And if you're swimming 3 times a week and you're maintaining your muscle with the level you're eating, that's fine. Don't get too hung up on all the longevity sort of influencers saying you must have X amount of protein, because you're right, we're all different. We've all got different levels of activity. Protein is important. There is a thing called the protein leverage hypothesis, which says that your body will continue to make you feel hungry until you've eaten enough protein. I actually do believe that, because protein is so essential. But as for sort of amounts, if you take your ideal body mass in pounds, let's say you really wanted to weigh 140 pounds, let's just say, then you probably need 140 grams of protein per day, which you could spread over 2 meals. Some people can eat enough in 1 meal. So that's my little answer. But Richard?
Yeah, completely agree. Look, protein makes up every cell in the body. We certainly shouldn't be ignoring it. I think the guidelines, as Stephen just said, of 1 gram per pound is pretty pretty safe. We need a minimum of 0.5 grams per pound in order to maintain. So at the very least 0.5. But it is very much an individual thing. I don't track anymore. I eat intuitively. I think that's the best way to eat. If you do want to track, I mean, what tends to work better for women is around 0.9, but there's no reason why you can't consume a little bit more. Your requirement, if you are working out and swimming 3 hours a week, is going to be a little bit higher than anybody else's, but 0.9 to 1 grams per pound should be plenty. Protein, the majority of the time, should be consumed with fat. We need the fat, and Stephen will explain this a little bit more detail, but we need a fat to absorb the amino acids. Fat also is essential for life. Every cell in the body is made of protein. Every cell in the body is made of fat. So as we eat protein in nature, it should be consumed with fat. That said, if body composition is an issue, then we can manipulate this with lowering the fat on certain days. Meal times, or the amount of meals, I also think is important. OMAD is a big thing at the moment, but I don't believe that most women thrive on OMAD. I think that men are genetically predispositioned to thrive better on 1 meal a day. The reason for this, I think that if through our evolutionary period, we would have been out hunting for long periods of time without eating, tracking our prey, catching and killing our prey, and going for long periods of time without eating, whereas the women would have been back prepping things and doing things in around the camp, if you like, but they would have been, and we've seen this in hormone fluctuations. When women don't eat enough, it can cause hormonal issues. So I think that women thrive best on 2 to 3 meals a day. There are exceptions to this, and I'm sure that there are women on the call that will say, I thrive on 1. And if you do, that's fine. But if you are having problems or you think there's something's amiss, then 2 to 3 meals can be more beneficial. Sometimes I'm OMAD, sometimes I'm too mad. I'm generally more towards 2 per day. I generally 2 meals a day. I find that I thrive better on this. But it is the $1 million question, isn't it? Everybody is different. And I think eat to satiety is rule number 1. If you were thriving on that, then that's fantastic. If you are having issues like hair loss or fatigue, then we need to start looking at the protein and fat ratios. Quite often, it's caused by a stress or under eating. Again, back to only consuming 1 meal a day or extended fasting. Don't push a fast. Eat when you're hungry. If you're not hungry, don't eat. But we do need protein. It is essential. So aim for around 0.9 per day, but try to do it intuitively. I think if you can eat intuitively successfully, then that's always going to be the key to consistency.
Yeah, that's great, Rich. And I think you said something in there that I would add a little bit to, and that is the often misunderstood or not even reported that you do need bile, not just for fat absorption, but also for amino acid absorption, which is why when you have fatty meat, some people, it really works as opposed to very lean meat because they're not producing enough bile, so the amino acids have not been absorbed. So we're now in the room with people that are here. Thank you very much. And I'm glad that you've all stayed so you can hear the answer. Lisa asked, is it okay to take astaxanthin every day as a separate supplement, or should it only be taken when we have active inflammation going on? Which is a great question, Lisa. And thanks for sticking around.
Yep. I consume it every day because I drink the electrolytes every day. You don't need it. If you are drinking the electrolytes, you don't need to supplement with astaxanthin. Many companies on the market will sell an astaxanthin supplement, but it's synthetic. Not all astaxanthin supplements are genuine. Mine, I believe, at last time I checked, was the only one available in the UK which was genuinely from a true source, from a natural source of astaxanthin and not synthetic. And a natural source is 21 times more potent. I use it every day. I don't think there's a problem with it. And the reason for that comes back down to the fact that it isn't a pro-oxidant. It doesn't begin its journey as a pro-oxidant, whereas things like turmeric and curcumin and other plant compounds do begin their journey as pro-oxidants. And if we've got time, we can maybe go into this, but I'm sure lots of you have heard me bang on about the activation of the NRF2 pathway, which is an oxidative stress pathway. So these compounds that we consume, they're not antioxidants, they're pro-oxidants, but it's believed that the effect of this, it confers a benefit, but it, and it can in some cases, but we can get into that, but in long term, it doesn't. It leads to a lot of downstream deleterious effects, but we don't get this activation with astaxanthin. And this is why it's known as the king of the carotenoids. I've got no issues with consuming astaxanthin every day. Astaxanthin is what gives salmon and flamingos its distinctive colour. So, would you not eat salmon, for example, every day? Well, I would, personally. I think salmon's fantastic. So why not use the supplement version, which is going to be a little bit more potent. But yeah, I've got no problem with that.
Okay. Helen, I can see your question, but Lisa, it's just leading on from what we just spoke about. So I'm going to carry on with Lisa because she said she's trying to keep her calcium consumption low as I'm trying to get my super tight calf muscles to relax. And then I can't read the next bit for some reason. I want to know if I should include a tiny bit of foods that contain calcium in order to help eliminate oxalates.
So you can, what's her name, Steve?
Lisa.
No, the oxalate lady that we had on.
Oh, Sally K. Norton.
Sally K. I'm awful. Think of all these big words and I can't remember people's names. I'm awful. So yeah, we had Sally K. Norton on a live, I believe, once, wasn't it? To speak about this in particular. So calcium has a higher affinity to oxalate, which means it can help with oxalate detox. I don't believe it's optimal. And the reason for this is if we look at people who are oxalate dumping, oxalate detoxing, they quite often suffer with a condition called hypokalemia. Hypokalemia with a K, which is a potassium deficiency. And the reason for this is oxalate also has a high affinity to potassium. So we're in a state now with oxalate detox. The oxalates are being released from the tissue within the body into the bloodstream. They bind in tightly to potassium, which leads to a potassium deficiency. And then we supplement with calcium. And as you know, by the question, I'm not a fan of excess calcium consumption because too much calcium, as 3 studies that we've referenced previously, can increase risk of cardiovascular disease by as much as 15%. And this, I'm not saying this to put you off calcium. Calcium is also essential for life, but it's all about the correct ranges. We can get all of the calcium that we need from diet. We don't need to supplement with extra calcium. There's plenty of calcium in an egg, about 24, 25 milligrams of calcium per egg. It's so easy to get to 400 or 500 milligrams. We don't need to be hitting 600 and 700 milligrams. So we're in a state of oxalate detox, hypoclemia, which is low potassium. Now, we're also consuming lots of sodium because we're living a low-carb ketogenic lifestyle. And as we said earlier, insulin's dropped, it's released sodium. So now we're supplementing, we're consuming lots of Celtic Sea salt, which is very good, and that's what we need. Excessive amounts of sodium, which we need, depletes potassium. So now we're back to the potassium issue. We're further depleting potassium. So if these oxalates have a high affinity to potassium, which is why we are in this situation of hypoclemia, why do we not just supplement with more potassium? And that takes us out of the hypoclemia state. It allows the oxalate to bind to the potassium and excretes it from the body. Now we're offsetting that sodium-potassium ratio, and everything is all fine and dandy again. I don't think Sally K. Norton liked my suggestion because I think it just probably went against everything that she put into her book. But we did a presentation, didn't we, Steve? And it was all there referenced. She was lovely. She was fantastic. We put it forward. She didn't say anything against it, but she is a big fan of calcium, and I am not. But if you are suffering with oxalate detox, oxalate dumping, and we're in a state of low potassium, and coming back to what I said earlier, meat, as nature provides us, contains 4 times the volume of potassium than sodium. So our bodies need potassium. We shouldn't fear these compounds, same as sodium. So increasing the potassium will alleviate that problem. And also it will allow you not to add in excessive amounts of calcium, which is excitatory to the muscle. And this is what can lead to cramps, particularly in carbs. You can also offset this with increasing magnesium. Magnesium can offset the calcium. So it's all about the ratio. In nature, we need roughly a 1-to-1 ratio of calcium to magnesium. But when we take supplements and when we consume lots of cheese and milk and eggs, live in a carnivore lifestyle, it's easy to increase the calcium and not consume enough magnesium. This is why the electrolytes that I make do not contain calcium, and they contain a high level, of magnesium to allow that to offset. If you wanted to supplement separately, magnesium glycinate is going to be the best for you in regards to cramps. And that will also allow for less tummy upset. My electrolytes contain a citrate, magnesium citrate, which also has a high affinity to oxalate, but excessive amounts can cause gastro distress initially, whereas glycinate doesn't. So you could put that in, but keeping the calcium low is always key to preventing leg cramps and muscle cramps in general. And then just to reiterate, you can offset it with increase in magnesium. And the potassium you can add to eliminate any oxalate detox.
That's great. And of course, my very childish thing about the magnesium citrate, if you want to know what the excessive amount does, think of Sean Connery saying magnesium shit rate. Yes, because it does get you on the loo there. Right now, I'm going to do Helen's question in reverse order, because one part of it is picking up on what you've just said, which is about calcium, and then there's a second part which picks up earlier on the stevia. And I just want to chime in with a little bit about calcium. So Helen has said, what about calcium levels for children and teenagers? I know some mums give calcium supplements, and Michael is always good with some great comments there. But just one thing I was saying the other day, and I've noticed Anthony Chafee also saying it. Who said it first? I don't know. But when you look at animals like lions, for instance, they produce calcium. You know, when they have cubs, the mother produces enough milk, and those lions are not taking calcium supplements. They are eating meat. So animals in the wild produce calcium without calcium supplements, without eating fish and stuff like that. They can eat red meat and they can make enough calcium to have a pride of lions and produce a lot of milk. And most mammals can produce a lot of milk with calcium in, and they're not taking calcium supplements. That's just my little 2 penneth. So Helen's asking, Rich, what about calcium levels for children and teenagers? I know some mums give calcium supplements.
So are they human, is the question. And this is an evolutionary appropriate diet. We don't need to supplement with calcium. Calcium has been well over-egged in the media over the years. And the reason being is that we believe that it builds healthy, strong teeth and bones, which it does. But we don't need anywhere near the volume that we are told in mainstream media. The reason that supplementation appears to work is that it slows down degradation. So if we look at a population of people who suffer with osteoporosis, for example, the first thing they do is give them a calcium supplement. A calcium supplement will not reverse osteoporosis, but it will slow down degradation. And the reason for that is the body uses calcium. So instead of pulling it from the bone, it's using the supplemented version and it's slowing down that degradation. But what is bone? Bone is mineralized protein. That means it's made from minerals and it's made from protein. The 40% dry weight of bone is made of protein. So we need protein. And when we look at studies of people over the age of 65 who have suffered with long-term osteoporosis, when we increase their protein, they reverse their osteoporosis. The reason for this is that the bone that we look at is a scaffold of protein and minerals. Animal protein contains protein and it contains lots of minerals. Now, the key to this is to send calcium to the bone. We need a direct correlation of increased sodium. So to send calcium to the bone, we need to increase sodium. We can't send calcium into the bone without increasing sodium. So just taking a supplement will only slow down degradation. It won't repair and build bones. So if we eat animal proteins and we consume the calcium from the animal proteins, and as I just said, an egg is a fantastic source of calcium. Beef contains calcium. We don't need to supplement with calcium. We just need to eat as nature intended and salt our meals. The animal proteins do contain salts. There's probably enough in there, I believe, to allow to repair and rebuild bone and reverse osteoporosis. And this is what happened in these studies. They didn't increase the salt quantity, but increasing salt on a carnivore lifestyle while eating meat, this is why we see a complete resolution in many cases in things like osteoporosis. So why are we taking calcium in the first place? Strong teeth and bones. Just eat meat. And it is as simple as that. If we don't need to drink the milk, we shouldn't be drinking milk really past the age of infancy. And we certainly shouldn't be drinking milk from another animal. I know we do, but we're not designed to. I know that there are people within our community who consume A2 milk, A2 dairy, and that's fine if you want to consume them. Those are the best options. But again, coming back to what we mentioned earlier, they do still contain casein. They can still cause intestinal permeability. And when we look at milk, milk contains high levels of protein, fat, and carbohydrate. And this is because it's meant to allow something that's just been born to grow at an incredible rate. If we were to continue to consume mother's breast milk past infancy, then we would become obese because we don't need all three at the same time. We shouldn't be consuming carbohydrate or sugar when we consume fat. We need all three in the beginning. Past infancy, we don't need them anymore. So I'm not a fan of supplementation of calcium for anyone, particularly children. I do believe that it could be dangerous in the long term. We just need to get the kids to eat more animal proteins. If you are struggling, look at things like the things that kids will eat. They love chicken nuggets. Just make them chicken without the nugget part, without the breadcrumbs. Tuna and mayonnaise I give to my little girl. I use the hunter and gather mayo. I mix that in and she loves it. She loves salmon and king prawns. She likes what I call curly burger, which is mincemeat or ground beef for our American friends. She loves that with a little bit of mayonnaise also. Cheese, she's a lover of. Cheese is fantastic, a good source of protein and fats again. So we can get these animal proteins into the diet quite comfortably with children. And it's all about re-educating. So when I make food, I get my little girl to make it with me. I take her shopping once a week. So all of my shopping is done in my local butcher. But I understand if I had my way, she'd be carnivore. Unfortunately, it's not completely my choice. I want to give her the choice. She's also in an environment where Her mum has a say. Her grandmother, when she's in school, I've tried speaking to the school and things, but it's these things are out of my control. But what I can control is when she's with me. So I take her shopping and I let her buy anything that she wants, as long as it's a single ingredient food, which means, there's no chocolate, there's no sweets. She can have fruit, which I don't particularly agree with, but it's all about understanding that it is real food. But she knows that all of her nutrients come from animal proteins. She was asked in school recently, what is more nutrient dense, vegetables or protein? Meat. And she was the only one that said meat. And obviously she's right. Whether the school thought I was right is a different matter, but she is right. And it's all about doing these little things. I get her to cook the meals with me, so she feels proud that she's made that meal, and then she wants to enjoy it and eat it. And I am a little bit lenient. She does add tomato sauce and things. But if that's what it takes to allow her to eat more animal proteins, then I'm all for that. It's all about these incremental changes. At least this way, the children think that they're making their own decisions, which they are. You're just giving them a gentle nudge in the right direction. But there's plenty of ways that we can consume plenty of calcium through diet. We do not need to supplement with calcium.
That's a brilliant answer. For those that don't know, Richard and I are speaking at a thing called the Ancestral Health Festival, 17th and 18th of August. And the reason I mention that is because my presentation is about stable isotope testing. But a little bit of my presentation is about the thigh bone, which is the longest and strongest bone in the human body and is composed of organic and inorganic components. And the primary organic component of a thigh bone is collagen, a fibrous protein that provides structural support and flexibility, and it makes up about 30% of the total protein content in bone tissue. In terms of weight, collagen typically accounts for about 20% of the weight of the femur, for instance. And the inorganic components of the femur include hydroxyapatite crystals, which are primarily composed of calcium and phosphate. These minerals give the bone its hardness and strength, allowing it to withstand compressive forces. So that's a little snippet from my presentation there. But I felt it was the right thing to mention, because when you talk about bone, people think it's just a stick of chalk that's made of calcium. It's not, and it's a wonderful matrix, and it's flexible, and there's a lot of protein involved in there. And obviously there's other things which I didn't mention: red blood cells, nerves, osteoclast, osteoblast. So it's made up of many, many things. It's not just a stick of calcium, right? So that's that. So big news is we've got to the end of the questions, which is really good. Just to remind everybody that Sunday, 8 a.m. in the morning, Richard and I will be doing what we're doing right now, and we will be doing it for 24 hours on YouTube at the Carnivore-a-thon, the 24-hour carnivore live stream. We've got tons and tons of guests. The most recent one was Ken Berry is desperately trying to make sure that he can do it. We've got messages going out to Robert Cywes as well, and a couple of other people that Richard didn't know I was trying to get in contact with. But the guest list is amazing. So it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to do 24 hours until 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday. We will still be here, I think, 8 o'clock in the evening doing this live stream on the Monday. I am playing soccer at 11 o'clock. On Monday morning, doing some soccer coaching. So I will not only be awake for 24 hours, it will at least be 27 hours. And of course, I won't be asleep before I start. So maybe about 30 hours. We did it last year and we're doing it again. So just to tell you who's on, it's not just me, by the way, it's Richard as well. We're doing this. It's continuous. We're not swapping. I literally stood here for 24 hours and Rich sat there for 24 hours. So it's, myself and Richard. We got Lee Copus, which is the Kent Carnivore. We've got Carnivore Muscle. We've got Phil Escott, Ben Hunt, Dr. Robert Kiltz, Dr. Anthony Chafee's popping in for 2 hours, which is really good. Dr. Rachel Brown, Karen Miles, who's a sort of great influencer, Bronson Dant, and Natalie Grasso, Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, Dr. Sean Baker, then possibly Ken Berry, but we don't know because he's travelling on that day. We've got Colt Milton, Jake Thomas, Pim Jensen, Craig Emmerich, Dr. Lisa Wiedemann, Dr. Sabrina Salt, Natalie West, Sadly, Professor Bart Kay can't make it because he's got another thing he has to do. Dr. Philip Avadia, Emily Harvo. We've got Kerry from Homestead Howe, I think, Jesslyn Randall, and maybe a couple of other people that I haven't mentioned there. But yeah, it's a nice lineup. I think it's going to be great. They'll be popping in. Every guest has got 45 minutes. So at the end of the 45 minutes, they can go off and Rich and I can talk about them. No, not really. Just to make it a bit easier. So if you didn't see it last year, there are playbacks for all of that on my YouTube channel. I don't know, Rich, you probably got links to yours as well. But yeah, 8 a.m. UK. What I'll also be doing is cutting up the 24 hours into hour segments and trying to subtitle it all and give you lots of timestamps so it's really searchable. Wow. I don't normally talk that much. But anyway, if you're listening to this as an audio podcast and you haven't joined the Skool Community, it is only $4 a month, and that's less than $1 a week. And you get live stream questions like we just did on a Monday at 8 p.m. for about an hour. You can also take part in over 9 courses. You can learn about protein. You can learn about the thyroid. You can learn about keto. There's plenty of downloadable free ebooks, and you've got a lovely bunch of people. I'm looking at a lovely bunch of people on my screen right now, but you can't see them because you're listening to the audio podcast. But yeah, if you want to take part, if you want to join in, you can come to these meetings. You can turn your camera off if you're really shy and just put questions into the chat. That's my bit. It is a fantastic lineup. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for everybody that's saying that Skool is really cool and it's really helpful. We will be here next Monday. We will be here, and be nice if you can come in to the live stream over that 24 hours, make yourself known, say, hey, I'm from the Skool Community. Do you recognise me? Now, last year, I was rubbish because we'd not done it before. It was the world's first 24-hour carnivore live stream, and I didn't think all these guests would turn up. I'm just, a small fish in a very big pond. And I thought, well, yeah, they're all saying they're going to come, but will they actually come? And they did. And if you look at the live stream playback, you can see on the hour, every hour, I'm just thinking, will they really be here for these people who are fantastic and really busy and have 4,000 million more, followers than Rich and I? Will they really turn up? And they all did. So a few people that turned up last year can't make it, even though they wanted to. They've been really kind. Judy Cho, Dr. Kevin Stock. So they were 2 particular guests we wanted to get back, but they can't make it. But anyway, we've got 24 guests, so 24 hours, 24 guests should be good. You can get in with your questions. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because Skool Community members, the ones that pay $4, get priority. So if you want to ask Dr. Chafee something, then you message me and you say, I'm one of your paid members and I want to ask Dr. Chafee this question. Why is he so good looking? Or whatever your question is, and we will ask him, obviously within reason. So that's that. So you get priority. Matthew's saying a Skool meetup would be amazing. It would. We're not big enough yet. Lisa's asking, where is the link for the 24-hour live? Well, the link for the 24-hour live I can get for you now and put it in the chat. And Rich could take over while I'm doing that.
Yeah, I was just typing in there now in regards to Helen's comment in organising a meetup. I think that's a fantastic idea. Maybe we should look at organising that. But yeah, this is number 2, isn't it? We did this last year for 24 hours. I'll be honest, I was heavily fueled with coffee. That was a big crutch for me. Again, you and I were live. We were and speaking before we went live at 8 a.m. for maybe an hour. So we were actually up for, by the time we finished, about 25 hours. Then I went to work the day, and then I went running in the evening, all fasted because I genuinely wasn't hungry, and I didn't sleep until later that evening. So I'm hoping that we can repeat that again, Steve, without having to use coffee as a crutch. I really don't want to put it back in, but I'm super excited and super scared at the same time, but I'm sure.
Are you?
Yeah.
I am absolutely surprised because I think we'll do it easily. I I've just put in the links. Now, if people are asking why is there 3 links, it's because our software is not able to record 24 hours. It only can do 8-hour chunks. So you have to go onto YouTube, and then when we get to the crossover, the link will be there. The itinerary has been posted on Skool, the running order. I will do it again at some point. But yeah, I'll do that in a minute. I'll do the running order and I'll put it in as a message. So anyway, should we thank everybody? Is that it, Richard?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you all. Brilliant to see all the regulars returning. I think we're building a fantastic community.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Your support means the absolute world to me, and if you're enjoying this show, I've got a small favour to ask you. I'd be incredibly grateful if you would consider becoming a supporter and make a small monthly donation. Your contribution will really help to improve the show. I'll be able to improve the software, maybe put a few more episodes out, and do many things that I'm hoping to do in the future. Do them a lot quicker. So, it's a small monthly contribution. You can cancel at any time, and the link is in the show notes. Thanks very much for listening.